Hello, this is Anna Lowe, and today I'd like to take you with me on location to Switzerland to see places that inspired elements of the story, Fire Maidens Switzerland, Billionaires and Bodyguards, Book 9. So I live close to Switzerland and the Alps, so I've been there lots of times, but I did do a special trip to Zurich to kind of get ideas particularly for this story. And one of the things I love doing when I do a trip like that is I kind of go real estate shopping, and I look around town for great locations for the house for, in this case, Claudia, my heroine, where she could live. So one of the things I did is after visiting the city's on the edge of a lake, and there's hills on either side, and eventually the hills on the south side become the Alps. On the north side, there's a nice neighborhood there, and the higher you go, you get to this section of woods. And I walked all the way up there and quite a distance high up for nice views of the lakes. And you see different houses, and you think, maybe I could set my heroine there, or maybe I could set my heroine there. And it was on this walk that I came across this building. This is the Dolder Grand Hotel. It's a real hotel in Zurich. And I thought, I got to write that into the book. So this is where the Guardians meet in the early scenes in Fire Maidens Switzerland. And in that scene, I had a lot of fun with playing around with the different shifter types. A place like Switzerland is just rife for that. Switzerland is made up of different cantons, kind of like states, and they all have their own symbol. So Uri has a bull, and Schaffhausen has a ram, and Bern has a bear. So it's quite easy to think of different shifter types who could represent the different parts of Switzerland, including in Basel, the symbol of Basel is a basilisk, which is part reptile, part dragon. So that was kind of fun just to throw those little details in. But as I continued to walk around Zurich, I finally found the house that I thought, this is the perfect place. It's this Tudor mansion right on the lake, right down by the lake. So where this picture is taken, imagine you're standing there, right behind you is where the lake is. So it's prime real estate, really cool kind of building. And this is where it was Claudia, where she grew up, and where Heath comes in I think, chapter 2 of the story to come in, and he meets her father and gets introduced to her properly for the first time. So I love just keeping an eye out for cool places like this and kind of imagining a story playing out in it. And as I said, there's a beautiful park all along along a big part of the north side of the lake. And during my visit there, I would jog every morning along the lake, and that's kind of where I got the idea for the scene of Claudia running along the lake and Heath trying to keep up with her. I visited in June, even though I knew the story would be set in the wintertime. And that was fun. It's quite easy to rent a boat and go out on the lake. So we did that, and that also inspired a scene in the book. It's just a brief mention, but still it was fun. And back in the center of Zurich, so Zurich has its modern parts, and it has a bit of an old town with kind of crooked little back streets and things. So as I walked along there, that's where I set the Annapurna pub, where some of the action of the story takes place. It's fictional, so I just imagined it into the old town somewhere. But that's Zurich, and of course, Switzerland is all about the Alps, the mountains. And I've spent 2 summers hiking in Switzerland with my family, and that gave me a good picture of the Swiss countryside and more locations that I knew that even though the story would start in Zurich, kind of the way you might start your trip by flying in or taking a train to Zurich, but then you head out into the mountains. And of course, beautiful chalets and houses all around. So on one of our hikes, I came across a place like this, and it was kind of, on this day, the fog was coming in low, but you find these little tiny barns and chalets way out in the middle of nowhere. And although this one is not very fancy, it's a very, very basic, almost like a barn. It's the kind of location I imagined Claudia having her own private getaway in. So places like that easily spur the imagination, and then you create a much more kind of a luxury chalet out of that. But what really grabbed me on one of our trips was we hiked along the Alpine Glacier, and it's actually the longest glacier in Europe. Something like 16 kilometers long. I have to look it up, sorry. But in any case, it's spectacular. It's just this river of ice that comes down from the Eiger, the Monch, and the Jungfrau, these very tall mountains in the center of Switzerland. And you're on the south side of those, and this glacier just kind of comes down, and you can imagine it's like they say, a river of ice. It just comes down from the mountains. So as I was hiking there, I was kind of dictating into my phone and saying, oh my gosh, this is the place. The dragons come up over the mountains, and they sweep down over the curves of this glacier. So yeah, spectacular places make it easy to have ideas about great scenes in stories, I think. The other thing about that area is you hike and you look at the Alpine Glacier, but we were really lucky to have some clear days like this. And on the other side, to the south, you see the Matterhorn. And this is exactly the kind of view that Claudia and Heath have from the chalet, and the view that makes Heath think of the Matterhorn and the connection to his mother, who was a mountaineer. Another important part of the story is the Chagata. The Chagata is one of these old pagan. It's a tradition that has its roots in pagan times, where villages, especially in the New Year, and now it usually happens in January or February, you kind of get dressed up as a horrible creature or a monster, and you have like giant cowbells and a stick, and you get a whole bunch of young people dressed up like this, or maybe not so young people, but I think especially young people, and they kind of go through the village making a racket and scaring people, but the idea is to scare away evil spirits. And that, I haven't been to the Chagata and Lötschental in Switzerland, but I've been to other ones, similar ones in different places. And they're quite cool to see, at nighttime, you see this parade of people all dressed up with these horsehair or cow hair costumes and carved masks. And little kids usually get scared. It's because you can't bring a small child to these. But it's quite fun to see and to imagine, these are events that go back hundreds of years to way, 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 way back to the old times. So that inspired a whole section, a whole scene, and actually a whole element of the story that originally I wasn't thinking in the direction of having, witches and demons and mountain spirits. But the more I thought about the Chagata and events like that, traditions like that are across the Alps, it became a bigger and bigger part of the story. Another location that the story goes to is Lac Leman. It's also the lake that Geneva's on, so some people refer to it as Lake Geneva. I only did a trip there ages ago, not specifically for this book. So what I did is I go on the internet and I do my real estate shopping that way. So here's this spectacular villa that I thought, yes, this is the perfect place. So this is Natalie's villa on Lac Leman. So Lac Leman is a long, skinny lake. Geneva's down at one end of it, but the whole South Shore is French, or most of the South Shore. France kind of wraps around the lower part of the lake. So that worked out in a good way to bring in other fire maidens from past stories. And this, as I said, this is how I pictured Natalie's villa on the French side of the lake. So here's some views. So that's a quick overview of some of the locations, the real-life locations that inspired the story. I hope you enjoyed traveling with me, and I hope you enjoyed the series. It was a lot of fun, and yeah, it's kind of a bittersweet moment now that I've reached the 9th and final book. I'll be launching a whole new series soon, though, so make sure you subscribe to my newsletter to hear more when that comes out. In the meantime, thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye for now.